Hello, welcome back to another week of the European Tour picks and bets. I am Skylar Hoke. My man Tom Jacobs is with us on the Mayo Media Network. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, it's good. You all keep me up late these days, so yeah, you're lucky I'm awake. But apart from that, yeah, really, really good. Thank you.
Well, rumor has it you're off to what we in the Americans say over here, bachelor party this coming week. So
Yes,
big week ahead. So these late nights, what do you guys
yeah,
call it? You said a stag
a
do
stag
is
do.
what you refer
Yes, so
to?
it's
Okay.
it's, it's not a bachelor party; it's a stag do. Which yeah, hopefully I'll come back with a better eye than this. So and this wasn't even fun. So we will see. Hopefully some golf bets pay for the week's
Yes.
festivities ahead.
Absolutely. We're headed to the Hero Open this week. Fairmont St. Andrews coming up for that. Before digging in though, big week last week, had a huge victory for one of the Challenge Tour players. Big stop for Daniel Gavins to clinch that first victory for him. And really, it is a life changing opportunity. Teeing it up again this week, we saw other Challenge Tour guys in the mix. Some big opportunities. So there was that. That Sunday was quite hideous, I would say, for some of the golfers who started off near the lead. Quite heroic from some
People
of
not
the
know
other
Jordan Smith.
golfers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Olympics was a fun time too. I enjoyed that. What were your thoughts on last week's events?
Yeah, I mean the Daniel Gavin's kind of showed what we've kind of been talking about for the last, I don't know, 3-4 weeks as we've been in this kind of rough part of the schedule for the European Tour, that it's not a huge step up for these Challenge Tour guys, and they really can get themselves in the mix. I think we've got another week like that again this week, which we reflect in our picks. The Olympics, I only really caught the kind of final parts of it. Um, and it was great. It was really, really good. I think it was really refreshing to hear Rory change his stance on it completely. It was kind of getting kind of got a bit sulky towards the end, how he was sort of reflecting on it, I think, and it was kind of like, I don't care, I don't really want to be there. And it's like, well, you don't have to go. You didn't go last time, so just shut up about it and get on with it. And then towards the end of the week, he kind of he enjoyed it. Um, Felt for Hideki a little bit when he was kind of racing those putts by, and there must be quite a lot of pressure on that. But CC Pan got a nice payout, which is not kind of the usual thing for the Olympics. And Xander Schauffele, did you guys proud winning the gold?
He did, and the boy from Bratislava, Rory Sabatini, with the old silver medal. Quite the few years transitioning for him, and that was the scenes all into Sunday
I couldn't
morning.
believe it when I woke up on Sunday morning and I was like, he shot a 60. I thought the scoreboard was wrong. I mean, the score, we've had some European Tour mishaps recently. I was like, Rory Sabatini, I didn't even think, I forgot he was even playing. And then all of a sudden, his Slovakian heritage paid off. But he
Yes.
married well, didn't he?
Yeah, she was almost as encouraging as anybody out there for them. I'm a big fan of Shotgun Start. I don't know. I bet a lot of golf listeners here on stateside are familiar with Brendan Porath and Andy Johnson, and they go on that bit all the time on Rory Sabatini. So keeping us up into the late hours of the evening, enjoying that. But no, I'm excited for another set event this week that we have. Hero Open is very similar to the last 2 weeks. We've seen arguably the weakest of the three. We
Yeah.
have Andy Sullivan coming back after finishing last week, kind of average at best, did not play the final round, but he's 16-1, the best odds you can find for him. So that really just sets the tone for the week that we have. We've seen events with Dietrich down at like 8s, 9s, 10s, some, to lead us off on a European Tour event at 16-1, I think just establishes what our odds are going to be. We're going to see lower odds for the Daniel Gavins types. Once again, we're going to see long shots potentially have a chance to really establish themselves with, again, top 10 finishes, carries it over into another event, can build up those points on the European Tour and hopefully translate that into a card for some of these guys who are looking to elevate their game. From the top of the board, there's not anybody outside of when we saw this course last time. Adrian Otaegui was the winner here. He is prolific from a tee to green standpoint recently. Week in and week out, he is gaining multiple strokes per round on the field. So whether or not that putter cooperates, that 3-putt at the Scandinavian Mix on the last hole, helped him, avoid a victory there. But, there's not really anybody that screams to me a standout bet this week at Fairmont St. Andrews. What about you?
I think is it Andy Sullivan is the only player in the top 100 in the field this week, which is it's quite alarming really. And it's kind of fair. I mean, we saw this course for the Scottish Championship last year. So although it's the Hero Open, don't get confused with last year's Hero Open because that was in England. So it's tough, isn't it? It's tough to get the guys to come over for these sort of events. I think you've got Kawamura has been playing incredibly well recently and played really well in the British Isles. So I guess he would be the guy for me out of the lot. Jordan Smith, kind of as we just referenced to, was the recipient of the bad play on Sunday. So and then you just got the usual suspects, Ryan Fox and Ategi are there just based on name value. Ategi more the ball striking, Nous and Armitage. I kind of always feel he's kind of undervalued. He's so popular over here, and he's he's very likable, and I think you get guys like that. And I think my first pick as well in Eddie Pepperell is kind of the same. I think he kind of, because of his name value, his price never kind of gets too high, and when it does, there's good reason for it. He's probably missed 10 cuts, whatever it is. But the reason I picked him this week is 33-1 and bigger maybe. He just loves Scotland. He absolutely loves playing in Scotland. He's had the second and the fourth at the Scottish Open. I think he was sixth in Carnoustie at the Open. He's tied 13th on tour in strokes gained approach. So, he's hitting the ball incredibly well. He was fifth after round 1 and 2 last week. Had a pretty poor Saturday and weekend in general to fall back. But he seems to love it. He isn't Scottish, but he seems to play like he is. I think he likes the finer things in life and having a few cheap meals and some wine, and maybe Scotland welcomes him that way. I don't know, but I think for me, Eddie Pepperell was the one that just about made enough appeal to me, even despite the slightly short price.
Yeah, and Eddie came out hot on Thursday last week, playing much better golf on the most difficult course of the two. There was significant wave split as well last week. If you kind of want to read through some of the tea leaves, from certain waves, there was actually a 3-stroke difference depending on which course you caught in the morning on Thursday to the afternoon on Friday. So golfers that got caught in those windows, absolutely. But Eddie was very impressive, shooting 4 under opening on Thursday and kind of what I thought was in the wheelhouse to take advantage of the opportunity. But almost Smith and him both showed zero form, in my opinion, heading into that. And of course, one round kind of blew up their week, but for 54 holes, they both were prolific. And Kawamura, you mentioned, of course, with these, it's just the odds game that we get into this area. I think Tario, who is at 33s once again, he played decent enough, again, to make it through all 4 rounds last week. You relatively had a decent week, of course, top 30, that you had in that sense. But again, it's kind of nice for him to have a week under his belt, a top 15th finish, improving, from Thursday when he went out on the more difficult course, opening with a 70. So he would probably be my pick of the litter, I guess, but I don't start my card around here.
I think we thought he was kind of a little bit short last week, and I kind of went with him because I thought the form was just so good that it was stupid to ignore, right? And he's kind of stuck at the same price despite impressing. Mm-hmm. And I know it wasn't quite, he never seems to be quite in it, but he played, pretty solid, like you say. Just back to Pepperell as well, he was 5th here after 54 holes last year as well. So very similar to what he was like last week. He kind of got himself in a real good position and fell away. And that, hopefully that's not a trend that's going to continue, but I think he's pretty classy when he gets into the mix very often. But your next pick, I mean, the guy hit incredible irons last week, and I'm sure you're going to come on to that as well.
Yeah. Before jumping to my lead off, I think the other one that might catch some attention in the mid range is the performance that Marcel Siem had at the Open Championship, of course, winning on the Challenge Tour the week prior. So to see him 45s, I don't really know what to think of it. I mean, if I had to detail his game out, when he comes up on the European Tour, those irons are very good from a strokes gained data perspective. Now, we didn't have strokes gained last week. You really just had to be digging deep into that Bet365 tracker if you want to get a feel for golfers, where you can find me every, Thursday through Sunday morning from about 5 a.m. to 11 a.m., just looking shot by shot at all my guys. However, not enough there in Siem for me, but which did have strokes gained statistics last week was the Olympics, and whether or not is accurate as some people pulled through some of the data and potentially wasn't spot on. Joachim B. Hansen did lead that field in, strokes gained approach, came out very hot. I think he touched 5 under on the front 9 of his opening round. So for me, Hansen's a golfer that probably has more in his tank relative to those that are priced around him. You mentioned Pepperell, you mentioned, perhaps Callum Hill, Connor Seam, Ramsey, Fox, some of these guys, I just feel that you can relatively say Hansen is similar, into one victory where it came in South Africa, 2 victories on the Challenge Tour. So has gotten over the line, but love trending irons in that sense. And his finishes are, shown with upside, in that sense. He did miss prior to that, 5 out of his last 6 cuts. The one that he did make was at the Scandinavian mix, where Otegi did finish second. He finished 5th that week. He also had a 7th in a couple weeks prior. So he has, touched the each way board enough to pay off kind of the odds that he's relatively 2. So in my opinion, I think I'm going to ride a little bit hot for him. And I don't care as much about travel, I guess, jet lag from a perspective of going east in the world, if you can consider Japan the farthest east, and going west. You make up time, or you travel with the time. So I know a lot of guys are going over from Tokyo to the WGC as well. So, they really don't even lose any time when they're doing that. But Hansen for me is enough there at that number at 50-1 to dive in.
And I think the thing I like about Hansen as well is that when he leads an event in a straight scan approach, he's not a guy that, that's out of the blue. Like, it's not a guy that doesn't hit his irons well all the time. Like, that is his strength. So when he does it, it's just a continuation and an improvement on something that's really solid as part of his game. If it was a guy that, we're very used to just making all his shots up a short game and suddenly has a good bit of irons, you'd maybe discount it. But to do what he does best in a loaded field from the top part of it, was really impressive. Going back to Marcel Seaman and not really knowing what to expect, he's just looking at location form here. He's been inside the top 5 after 36 holes at the Alfred Dunhill, finishing 15th, and also finished 14th at the Scottish Open after being second after 54 holes. So if he's back to the Marcel Seaman that we knew, way back when, with a very hot temperament and did win on occasion on the European Tour. I think it was 4 or 5 times before he obviously won that Challenge Tour recently. Then that's great. And I think he is a guy, he's been talking about it an awful lot, that he did get to the real deep, dark places of the world before finding his form. And I think now that should really kick him on and maybe he's back to what he was doing. But I don't know. I don't really know what to expect. It's one of those ones where I think he's going to be really popular this week because of what he's done recently. And maybe that's just a trap that I've tried to avoid.
Yeah. I think there's, very similar golfers. Daniel Hillier kind of stood out a little bit to me, the extremely talented Kiwi that, got, I don't want to say he choked it down the stretch. He found a couple bogeys late, played exceptional on Friday, got himself into a position where, being T1 heading into the weekend, when you haven't really done that in your OWGR career. I know a few of my good buddies were on him, Jude and Brad Todd, who are always kind of backing Daniel Hillier. And I think that overall, just a very strong talent. But the next golfer we go to, I think, is incredibly similar in the sense of what it's been on the Challenge Tour. And we are both backing Chase Hanna this week. And let's dive a little deeper on our thoughts on him this week.
Yeah, so I think, this guy and the one you're going to come on to next as well, I think we pretty both kind of looked at him. Is there too short of a price? Have they come in too much from what they were prior to it? But I think very much similar to what Tario was last week. I don't want to just avoid the form for the sake of going, he's too short. There's an awful lot of the things about value and are you just reaching? And I was like, well, if I think he's got a really good chance of contending, and I certainly do think that Chase Hanna does, then why would I ignore it, right? We've just seen Daniel Gavins do exactly what he did last week. Maybe slightly beneficial of some poor form down the stretch from some more experienced guys, but Chase Hanna, what is it? He's finished inside the top 7 in 5 of his last 7 starts. So when he's made the cut, he's not finished worse than 7th. And encouragingly as well, as that last 6th place finish was at the Celtic Manor. So he's made that step up. Big signing for he signed on with ISM, which is obviously a big media company, big management company over here, and that's kind of a sign of what you expect from him. There's always that natural talk, isn't there? There's an American and European tour. Is he going to be next Brooks Koepka? Maybe a little bit long in the tooth for that to really start doing what Brooks has been doing. But I I think he'll be certainly talented. We've seen a lot of guys come over from America and really make a really good career for themselves, and he might just be the latest in that line.
Yeah, he also led the Kazoo Open in strokes gained approach of the golfers who are teeing it up this week, almost getting 2 strokes per round. So, some intriguing numbers. And I think there's enough at 66 there, when you compare it to the Gavins and the Hilliers and the Tarios, to have those odds. I think there's definitely enough juice to be squeezed there. The one that, you mentioned again, debating on price, debating on continuing the hot form. I can't ignore what Hugo Leon, has done. Once again, he's trickled this price down. 150s, 90s, now 66s is the best you can really find this week. But, was able to crack the top 10 last week after, again, improving round by round the previous week. He played the final 36 holes blemish free, so 0 bogeys on his card, which would have been the best rounds of anybody on the weekend. And again, we've talked about his game over and over, continues to hit fairways, greens, but by my looks of it, with my eyes when I woke up in the morning and tried to scroll through and see what Hugo was doing, he's getting up and down a lot more than he used to. His around the green game and putter has picked up where, there were some par saves that I didn't think he stood a chance on and continued to. He just missed placing last week, unfortunately, which would have been nice at 90-1. But I can't not go back to him at this field with the price still enough there. If he was in that 40s range, yeah, I think it's a pass there, but 66 is enough. And again, you'll see me next week in that Tigers hat representing for Hugo if he can really get to the places once again.
Like I said to you earlier, I think that, that was kind of the debate, wasn't it? It was about prices. And I think, why, it's 90-1 down to 66-1, and okay, it's not like he's gone from 400 to 90-1. He's dropped down, a very small amount, really, figuratively speaking, and it's a weaker field. So,
yep.
Not only has he shown, like I said to you earlier, you picked him based on his iron play. It had been, on the Challenge Tour and how he was impressing, what you'd known from him in the past when he'd been on the European Tour, and then he's done exactly what we expected him to do. Okay, he didn't quite place last week, but he's gone 14th and 7th in his 2 starts. And like you said, he improved. So he's 11th after round 1, 58th, had a bit bad Friday, didn't he? But really, pair of 65s over the weekend was, just incredible. And it was pretty much a similar story at the Kazoo Open as well. He was kind of 25th and 14th over the weekend. So for me, I think he's done plenty enough to justify that price. And just going back, obviously, to Hannah before we move on, he lost 2 strokes on the Sunday in putting, and I don't know if that's nerves, if it was just a tough day for on the greens, but that's just a sign of what could have happened as well. It could have been a lot better if he made some strokes up. So all ifs and buts and all a bit of a waiting game. But while we're living in this kind of 66-1 range, which feels like a good range on the European side, I mean, I don't really see very often that the favourites kind of win unless it's a strong event where the best players in the world come over. It's very seldom that an Andy Sullivan this well will go and win it by 10. It doesn't kind of happen. Armitage doesn't go and kick on.
John Catlin should have won last week though at those numbers. He bogeyed 3 in a row, could not make a putt on the back 9. I thought we had a chance at 28s. Like that got me going a little bit because he was striking it over the weekend.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? And like we said, we've started our card at that kind of 33-1 range and bigger, and that's kind of where Catlin was, in relation to the market. So I don't think you need to go right to the top of the market very often unless you really like Andy Sullivan. I said to you before, he's a class player and he can win, but there's question marks over the rest of them, and now we're kind of living in this mid-range where I think there's just a really solid group of players. Chase Hannah and Hugo Leon are at different levels of the spectrum in terms of experience and what they've done and where they are in their careers. But ultimately, they're playing the same sort of golf and hitting their irons well, and that's why we like them.
Yeah, and I'm going to go right back to the well of another in-form golfer, and I guess it's a snap into form, and we talked about him last week after he won the Kazoo Open in Nacho Elvira. Nacho – it's a different world right now, I think on the professional tours. One, the European tour has been a little bit, without fans coming back till recently, bubbles. traveling between countries. I think that just puts a little bit different spin compared to the PGA Tour. And maybe, getting the monkey off your back, having your first win, the celebrations, the hangovers, the mindset, it might be a little bit different because we continue to see guys back it up in the weeks following. And Nacho came out Thursday, Friday, and I was like, man, he might do this again. His irons, again, when we talked about his missed cuts, they were still really good in lead up form. So looking back through the data, I wasn't all that shocked to see Nacho, nag that victory. And now, he did it last week, where his weekend, maybe it caught up with him, but to see how well he bounced back, to be able to still get him at a number, that is a third of what he won at, what is he, 70s this week? I just think you can see guys stretch these runs in a little bit. You have the Higo, recently you had Catlin stretch it out for 2 wins and 3. You had Horsfield stretch it out for 2 wins and 3, events. We kind of see this stretch of golf that can happen. So I think there's enough for me to just not throw out, somebody who was a recent winner.
We had it all last year. We had Rasmus Højgaard. You said about Sam Horsfield. We had Bezuidenhout. We had Catlin. All just kind of won events soon after one another, and they're not the most experienced guys. It's not like we're watching Dustin Johnson in back-to-back weeks, like you'd expect them to do. These are guys that hadn't won before, or had won very few and far between. So it does. Like I said earlier, I think that there's just a difference this year, and probably for the next 3 or 4 months, of just the pressure being off. Like you say, I don't think you can go out and get hungover as often as you can. They're in their rooms, so if they get hungover in their rooms, there's probably more problems than there is there winning. But it's a tough thing to do, to go back to back, but I don't think it's tough to back up a good start. Like I said to you, I think Daniel Gavins will probably go well again. I'm not going to dive in them again because I don't need to. There's other guys I like around it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he does what Nacho Elvira does and comes out really quickly Thursday, Friday, and maybe tails off. But it's Oliver Farr that I'm going to go for next. 4 straight cuts on tour, which doesn't sound great, but for someone like him who's perennially been kind of inconsistent in his career, T23, T59, T14, T11, he's just improving his golf. He was tied 9th on this golf course last year. He was tied 3rd in his event, if you want to call it that, at the Hero at the Forest of Arden. He's won 3 times on the Challenge Tour. So, like we've been saying, it's not a massive step up. And I think now he does need to make a definitive step up in terms of prestige, and he wants to get European Tour titles, even if it's not the strongest of fields. 7th best player in terms of form in the field, but he's priced as, outside the top 20 in the market. So I think there's value there. I like it. His irons are not alarmingly good, but he was 7th, I think, 6 starts ago and 23rd last time out. So yeah, I really like it. I think he's got a great chance of really having a go at that first win, and if not, finishing inside that top 6 or 7.
Yeah, I just think there's so many guys in this middle range that there's enough recent for me, and we're betting on a hot month, compared to stretch out of long golf. Of course, that's where a lot of these guys, to your earlier point, become unbettable because they are the more consistent, better performers, but maybe they aren't nabbing the wins at that same rate. So in my opinion, I just think we keep going into the mid 50s, late 90s, and then, try to get into the triple digits if we're going to have a long shot, which you bet we do.
Oh, yeah, we'll have a long shot.
You got 2 of them. You're on board too. I like this. But before we even get there, there's one more golfer that I just have to talk about who I think had, Catlin, like I mentioned, had me on tilt a little bit as we went through there, but no golfer had a wilder week, I don't think, than Schwan Kim. Also, is it Swan? I think that sounded good.
Schwan. I've never actually heard it in commentary, but I always just call him C1, which is just because I'm uncultural, and it's probably Schwan.
Yeah, I like Schwan Kim. So Schwan Kim had 18 birdies and 1 eagle in 54 holes. He is averaging over a third of his holes under par. And let me tell you, like I said, 54 holes, because he did not play that final round. He couldn't even stretch it into Sunday, get inside that top 35 to play the final round because he found himself a 9 on his back 9 on Saturday, 3 balls out of play. And the day before, 2 double bogeys. So again, just couldn't keep himself clean enough. I mean, you limit those. You throw in just instead of 2 double bogeys and a 9, just say it's 3 bogeys. You're picking up what, 4-6 strokes.
Yeah.
Schwann's up there with the leaders. And we get him at arguably, deeper odds, or if not the same odds as what he was last week. Again, this is
an
some
easy
of the
game,
things,
isn't it? You just take those 9s away, take those double bogeys away.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Na followed up his 16 with a birdie on the next hole. It's really not that difficult. Just
why do we need mental coaches and caddies? Just hire you. Look, just scrub those 9s off your card.
Absolutely. So Schwann season is upon us. 90s, and it's not just what last week has shown. Schwann has been somebody who has. Yes. So like he was on our short list last week, and you mentioned how tilting or how it was. I mean, we woke up on Thursday morning. He's in the clubhouse 7 under, looking pretty favorite on the 365 odds, 8-1. It's like, okay, he's gonna rip this off potentially. And before you finish breakfast, he's back to 2 under.
Yeah, I mean, his scorers put the wrong number up on the scoreboard somehow, and someone's copied it, and they won't be scoring next week. So it's he has been in an incredible form, and his ball striking has improved. He's a guy that kind of has never been solid, consistently with his irons and drive, and he's kind of been, he makes a lot of putter. He's always been a very good putter. But yeah, once he starts making up strokes with his irons and he puts in consistent form, you want to take notice. And like you say, it looked like, if you're just looking on a form sheet, you might just go, okay, well, that's the end of his run. He's had a really good run of 3 or 4 weeks, and it's just got too much. Whereas if you look at it like you did, and the amount of birdies and eagles he's made, and you just take that 9 away, he'll be absolutely fine. So I mean,
that's all you need.
Ben Terrio would have won last week if he took away his double bogeys on every single round. But no, jesting aside, I think it is an important thing to do. I quite often do it where I look at players now, and when you're diving into it as deep as we do, you kind of want to see what, if they didn't have a double bogey on Friday morning, what does that do to their round? And they go from 15th to 6th in the final standings, and you think, well, it wasn't a pressure situation; it was just one bad hole. That's how close they can be to a really, not life-changing week for many of these people, but a very different week altogether.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So I'm going to fire off a few. I got a couple tweets this week, which was pretty cool. Responding in regards to, we did a quick run through of golfers that at the end that we said, okay, playable on DraftKings on our short list. Daniel Gavins was one we had brought up on that Challenge Tour forum. Somebody who was the reason why you were taking down big money on DraftKings available. So before we go into our 2 long shots, we'll wrap things up. I'm going to rapid fire a few names, and I'll even get you kind of a yes or no. Okay. Yeah. So these are golfers that kind of stand out to me below 8K on DraftKings as we go through. What are your thoughts on, or again, yes or no? Got to keep it short because we want to talk to WGC just for like 5 minutes. Ashen Wu coming from the Olympics.
Yes.
Okay. I thought for sure no.
I said yes while shaking my head. But yes.
I know. Alejandro Canizares.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's on the short list.
Yes.
Love him.
Very good form. Paul Peterson.
Yes.
Yep. I would go in on Paul Peterson. Back to Schumacher Sharma.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know.
This is easy, isn't it?
Yeah, you're too good. This one I think is a big misprice. Matthias Schmid is only $7,200 on DraftKings this week. He is showing up.
I'm just going to say no because I said yes too many times.
That's fair too.
But yeah, it's been a lot of yeses so far.
So let me go back through. Craig Howie.
No.
Okay. He didn't end up playing last week. We debated if he was in the field, in and out. We saw a couple late ads to the field as well. I think Brandon Stone was a late ad, as well as Hillier got in from that top 10. Lucas Bjerregaard.
Yes, and the reason why is a yes, because he's finally made that cut. He won the Alfred Dunhill Links. He's played well in Scotland multiple times, and I said to you to confirm there wasn't any stats. So I do not know how well he hit his irons last week, but there was just a return to form or his
Yeah.
driver was gaining strokes, which is his game, then I really like his chances. But we are a bit blind on what it was a success last week.
I mean, his peak ball striking reminds me of my friend Hugo Leon. So I think there might be
aspiration for
that. Martin Simonson.
No.
Okay. He's somebody who always shows up from a strokes gain when he pops up here. Challenge Tour is okay. I'm just throwing out names that kind of pop to me as we go. Bryce Easton.
Yes.
I'll let you talk on him. You wanted to talk on him.
Yeah. So he was tied 16th last year, and he was second after round 1. I think he shot 64 maybe. And he was 8th 2 weeks ago at Celtic Manor as well. He's not a guy that's kind of made a ton of waves on the European tour. A lot of his stuff has kind of been on the Sunshine Tour as a South African, and he's been around for a while. He's not a new guy. So we kind of know what he is at this point. But I do think, especially for DraftKings, he's going to be a guy that can seriously contend for a top 10. If I was betting on him, I'd bet him probably as a top 10 perspective. Rather than, I don't think there's much winning upside, maybe not. But for DraftKings, I think he can help your team.
So he would be one. Let's see here. Austin Batista.
No.
He missed a 3-footer on the second to last hole on Friday, and I think he lost me a lot of money by doing that. Hao Tong Lee.
No.
I just had to get some more no's out of you.
But that, I mean, he loves links, which is, or fake links if you like. So it would just make sense that he would go and lead it, but no, definitely not.
Okay, let's go into your long shot here. 350s, I think we have available on this young stud.
Yeah. So Tom McKibben, is a guy that I brought up a couple of shows ago. Maybe going back, he made his professional debut at the Tenerife Open, and it was a guy that I just kind of read an article about, and when you look deeper into it, he'd actually had some pretty prestigious wins over stateside in his amateur career. He's always going to get linked to Rory McIlroy because he's from Hollywood there, so it's his home golf course. Calls him a friend, which is always exciting for people that are looking out for that. But he's been in pretty good form since he turned professional. He started with, I think it was 6 straight missed cuts, but that was sort of either side of his professional debut. But tied 12th at the Irish Challenge, tied 16th in the Vadrul Golf Challenge. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But the last 2 starts, 34th the Italian Challenge and tied 26th the ISPS Hander. So I think he's showing some signs now, and that was kind of a step up for that tied 26th. And 4 rounds of 70 or better, I was pretty impressed.
He is a golfer who, is somebody you keep an eye on as they kind of come onto the scene, and it's just a little glimpse on a leaderboard. Last week was his best finish, but he was also top 10 through 18, and was, I think, 3 under like really early last week. And it's things like that just, again, it's a mental note to scoreboard watch as it goes on, because 9s can come out of nowhere and you forget about the rest of those, birdies they had. It's just, portraying a good week that could have been there. The golfer that I am going into, and again, I love to keep you guys on your toes. And this one, Tom, I think, I guess I would say Laird Shepherd is in the amateur ranks a little bit of out of nowhere, the way he won, the recent amateur championship, coming back. I believe he was 8 holes down on his opening 18 match and got it all the way back through 36. They play 36 holes for the championship of match play in the amateur championship. And, the other thing, you roll that into an open championship spot where he opens with a 74. And then he battles back to miss the cut by 2 strokes. He shoots a 69 on that Friday to, have a decent showing for an amateur. But as you go back through, he's cracked the top 50 of the world. And you see him in Scotland for the amateur championship. He had St. Andrews Links, wasn't anything that special, but he was winning multiple events in his lead up. He doesn't have a prolific from a, I guess I would say, quantity size. He only has, I think it's 12 amateur events on the World Amateur Golf Ranking site, 3 of those being victories, which, again, the strike rate for that, even at that level, is impressive, and enough at 500s, in my opinion, to find him. I'm never going to be the person who just bets a top 20. I couldn't live with myself if my 500 to 1 shot, won, because I couldn't throw a little lunch money his way on the each way. So I think it's a relative play if I'm putting myself in perspective for a top 20. DraftKings, his play that just came out with it. Let me see here. They priced him. Oh, he's cheap. Here we go. 6,100. So, you can mix that in, on there, get that top 20 action for what is the premier, European amateur winner of the year. Joe Long has not turned that into any sort of success anywhere. His name has shown up a couple of times recently, a little better than but he also battling a shoulder injury. So give Joe Long the credit of the doubt, or give him a little credit in that situation. And, I just think Laird Shepherd's worth chancing in the situations because you might only get the one shot at 500-1 when he catches those each way. So I'm excited for him to tee it up this week. But let's quick run down our cards here before we give 5 brief minutes on the WGC.
Yeah, so Eddie Pepperell for me at 33-1. I think Oliver Farr was around 66-1 when we looked. Chase Hanna the same price. Bryce Easton, I'm still jury's out on whether I actually want to bet him, but I think it's like 250-1. And Tom McKibben at 350-1 to make a splash.
Awesome. For me, Joachim B. Hansen, 50s. Chase Hanna with you, 66. Hugo Leon, really excited for Hugo this week, 66-1. Nacho Elvira, 70-1. Schwan Kim at 90s. And then Laird Shepherd, 500-1. And we'll get that top 20 action with it. So, Tom, give us a quick, brief rundown for me, who you're intrigued at WGC Memphis.
Yeah, so I try and find European Tour guys, and it's not the easiest thing to do this week. There's not many of them in the field, true European Tour guys. But we'll start with Matthew Fitzpatrick. His form in America has been astounding this year. He's 4th and 6th at this golf course, and he was leading us around 2 over 64 on Friday back in 2019, and he did the same score last year, but it kind of dragged him up into like top 20s because he had such a bad Thursday. But you just look at his year, and he was 5th at Genesis, 11th at WGC Concession, 10th at Bay Hill, 9th at Players, 34th at the Masters, not great, but 4th at the Heritage, 23rd at the PGA, 10th at the Palmetto. He's playing really, really well. The only thing that's missing is a win. It's eluded him so far in his career, just like it has Tommy Fleetwood, just like it had for many other golfers for a very long time. He doesn't win maybe as much as he should even on the European Tour because he doesn't dedicate as much time to it. But I really think with that kind of 4th and 6th place finishes on the golf course, I'm pretty impressed with him. Shane Lowry, again, there was a slight hesitancy to play him because of the Olympic thing, but I kind of agree with you that I think the travel will be fine. He was 6th here last year. He got better, every round. His ball striking has just been superb, hasn't it? We talk about the guys that are hitting the ball well. He's certainly one of them. Sergio Garcia, following on from that as well.
Knew that was coming.
His numbers are just absolutely phenomenal. What is it? Colin Morikawa, Gap, maybe Paul Casey and Sergio there, just for how well they're hitting the ball. He hasn't been great at this golf course since it's been a WGC. That's probably coincided with some pretty bad form on his part. He has got a 4th place finish here back in the day. So I think the course will suit him for those reasons. And then, maybe our only real true European Tour guy, I suppose, Aaron Wright. He was 12th here last year on his debut. It kind of was a bit of a backdoor 12th, I suppose. He started slowly, got better every round, going 47th, 36th, 26th, 12th. But he's been in pretty decent form of late, and it's a golf course that should suit him. If you look at Matthew Fitzpatrick, and he's played well here. You've looked at Shane Lowry, and he's played well here. Pretty similar skill sets. Not guys at the longest off the tee, but scramble well, which I think is really important. And that would be my kind of quick picks for the St. Jude from a European Tour perspective. I think they're kind of all battling out Daniel Berger and Brooks Koepka this week.
Yeah, I think Rye is even more impressive. He came in off of 3 straight miscuts to have that finish. And again, his form, Kazoo was disappointing for me when he finished 63rd there, but it was coming after that top 20 at the Open Championship where he had shown, some lead in. I think it's fun down at the low end of the DraftKings perspective. If you want to get unique with these small field, no cut events, Wade Ormsby is coming in with a T12 and a T10 in his last 2 events at the minimum. And Minwoo Lee is just a player. It wouldn't surprise me his type of talent to break through. Again, he had that victory at the Scottish Open, which is a huge victory relative to what he's done. 74-69. He had that same Laird Shepherd scores at the Open Championship. So maybe it's a sign for a nice little double there to pay off, an entire island. But no, I think Min Woo being very cheap. And then Aaron Rai, 6,300, 6,200 for Min Woo, 6K flat for Wade Ormsby. I think those are ways that you can get unique. And then I'll throw one Barracuda in there. Thomas Pieters was unbelievable so Thursday was so good. Saturday was so good. Friday was miserable. Sunday opening 9, very good. So what's that give us? 36, 45 good holes. I mean, that's not bad. There's enough decent, and it's what do they call it? It's Stableford scoring at the Barracuda, which Schwan would have been great at last week. He probably would have won the event. Yes. So we could use that this week. So Thomas Pieters, I think, will find himself on my card for the Barracuda. But that wraps us up for this week. And again, if you like the audio format of our version here, if you don't want to see Tom fighting it out into the wee hours of the morning across the pond here,
you can. This week is horrible.
But you can find us at Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, The Mix, where we break down all of the different sports Pat has on his shows or on his feed. So we would love for a rating and review in support of us as you continue to listen on for another great European Tour event. So thank you guys so much and best of luck this week.